I just want to apologize. Like, I've been trying to figure out where in my room is like a good place to film, and there's just really not anywhere in my room that's a great place to film. The lighting in here is not that great. I've tried doing it in front of my window, but then you just have like my door and my coat hanger and in my wardrobe, which I always forget to shut the doors of in the background. I tried it sat on my bed with like my nice decor in the background, but I figured why not take it back to the OG spot, my first ever YouTube video, and film it actually in front of my books. The lighting, it's not great. We're just gonna live with it. It's summer, it's a bit brighter. I just think, you just have to accept me for me and not for how I'm lit up. So, at the time of filming this, it's the 22nd of July. So, kind of midway through the year. Yeah, I'm only 22 days behind schedule. And by the time you see this, I've got like a couple videos queued up. I'm actually getting good at like scheduling in YouTube videos so I don't just forget to post them. So by the time you're seeing this, it'll probably be like the end of July, beginning of August time. So, just just don't worry about it. It's like midway through the year. We're like midway through the year, guys. I've had a month to reflect on the previous first 6 months, and now here we are. I just figured I'd do a bit of like a reading check in. How's my year going? What have been my favorite books so far? Let's just get into it. I don't want to give you any spoilers. So I know I said I'd do like an update and like a check in of all of the books that I've read in like the first 6 months. But I lied. I'm actually just gonna do it up until now because I figure why not just be as up to date as possible, give you all of the relevant information to do with my reading. I'm just really considerate like that. So far this year I have read 42 books. Pretty good. Not too bad. However, the past few years, I started off pretty good. Couple years back, I read 63 books in a year, and I was like pretty chuffed to that. Year after, I also happened to strangely, bizarrely get 63 books that year. Year after that, we're talking 2023. I got like 76, I want to say. And then last year, I hit records and I got 80 something. I got 87 or something. Like very close to 90. So I thought, well, kind of obvious train of thought, one would think, okay, well, I've been getting new high scores every single year. My yearly reads is just going up and up and up. Why not aim higher? Why not aim for 90? And I thought that seemed pretty reasonable. I basically almost got 90 last year. Why wouldn't I get 90 this year? Except I'm currently 8 books behind track, which, maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but it feels like a lot. I feel very behind. But I'm doing better. A month ago, I was like 11 books behind schedule, so I'm trying to make my way up. Now that it's like the summer, I'm trying to. But I'm also like, I've just had summer plans and I'm seeing people and I'm doing things, so in a way, I'm also still not reading as much more as I was before summer. But anyway, I wanted to kind of talk about like how have I felt trying to keep up with this goal. What do I think is interfered? I will say I think my best theory at the moment is that in previous years I've often had 2 books on the go, if not 3. I'm a very like I don't really do multiple books on the go unless they're like different mediums of reading. So for example, my 2 books on the go would always be a physical book and an audiobook. And what's happened this year is that my kind of audiobook listening has like decreased a lot. Before I went to uni back when I was in high school and like towards the end of last year as well, like in the beginning few months of uni, I had this habit of like every time I got ready in the morning I would listen to an audiobook whilst I got ready, and then also often on the bus on the way to school when I was in sixth form. So it meant that like I was getting through audiobooks depending on the length they were, sometimes like in a week, like in a school weeks, in 5 days and stuff. um but I felt recently that I just haven't been doing that as much. I haven't been I started just reading my physical book in the morning at uni, and then just, I don't know, getting ready in silence. It really doesn't take me too long to get ready for uni, and I don't have like the same length of like journeying time as I did in sixth form, I guess. So I don't really, but I think the biggest issue is me and my mum share an Audible account, so I'm on her Audible account. So like she runs it, she buys the books she wants, and then I just go on and like have a little peruse and be like, oh, do I want to listen to anything? And originally that worked out quite well because I had like her whole little discography of books that she had obviously bought over time because she's had that account for ages. And so I was like pretty satisfied, but now I've kind of gone through and listened to quite a lot of what I wanted to listen to. So now whenever I go on, I'm just a little bit uninspired. I'm just a little bit like, oh, I don't really know. I don't fancy much of it. And I also keep starting audiobooks and then actually not being like super happy with them. So for example, I started Wuthering Heights by, which Bronte is it? Not Charlotte. Is it Elizabeth? Guys, that's really embarrassing. That's like common knowledge that I should know. Anyway, you know who I'm on about. And anyways, I'm sorry to say I've listened to what felt like hours of that audiobook, and I was still only like 20% of the way through the book. And it was just so dull. It was really just trudging along. It felt like nothing was happening. I didn't really care. And I just don't get it because so many people are like, no, this is like one of my favorite classics ever. Like, this is one of my favorite books ever. Like, I love it and stuff. And like, saying it's like the favorite Bronte book, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I really just was not, I just didn't care. I was so bored, so I ended up DNFing it because I was like, this is taking too long and I'd rather listen to something fun. Like, it's slowing down my reading progress and I want to actually listen to something fun. So I then started listening to, bearing in mind it took me like a month or two to DNF that book, right at the start of the year, and then I started listening to this series that my mom has called The Chronicles of St. Mary's. And it's really good, but it's one of those ones that's like extremely long. It follows this woman who kind of joins this, I don't want to say secret society, but like the secret organization that's like government funded, but only like high up people in the government know about it, where basically they can time travel and like go back in time. So they're always going back in time to, discover like what actually happened at different events, and they get to like see these events in person and stuff. And so it's really good, it's really funny, it has like an amusing main character. But again, like I just kind of got to a point where I got halfway through, I want to say like the fifth one. Um, and I was just kind of like, or maybe it was the sixth one actually, and I've just kind of like lost interest over time because it obviously, like when you have that many books, sometimes it can't help but just get a little bit repetitive. And they basically had like this weird plot twist in the book before, and like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but they just made like an authorly decision that I just didn't love, so then I wasn't as interested in following the series. So I'm currently like, I wouldn't say I've necessarily DNF'd it, but it has been months, or at least it feels like months, since I last listened to that one. So I'm like midway through it and I've just haven't finished it, and to be fair, I don't know if I will. Um, but anyways, with all that being said, I'm happy to report that since coming home from uni, I have somehow then just picked up my listening again. I spoke to my mum about it and she recommended me some. Um, so yeah, I read one actually. I don't know if you know like it's like the Hades and Persephone series, The Touch of Darkness. I read like the first one of that and the second one because I had it on iBooks and I didn't really love them. And my mum has a lot of other books by that author on her Audible. I think her name is Scarlett St. Clair, or something like that. And so, like, she was recommending me some from her, but because I'd read, like, A Touch of Darkness and stuff, I was like, oh, well, they were okay, but I didn't really love them. But I ended up listening to, one of them by her. I'll check the name of it now. It's called When Stars Come Out, and it was actually really good. I genuinely really enjoyed that one, like, as an audiobook. I think that's the thing as well at the moment. A lot of the books that my mom has on Audible are just ones that I haven't heard of. Like, they're all fantasy as well, which I already read a lot of, so there's kind of like do I want to overwhelm myself with the genre? Um, but yeah, but they're also just ones that I haven't heard of, so I always feel really nervous going into them because I don't want to get into like an audiobook slump again and then like slow down my reading. Obviously, I will say that like your worth as a reader doesn't matter on how many books you read a year, and I don't really care how many books I read a year. Like at the end of the day, I'm not gonna go crying if I don't reach my goal, but I do find it fun to kind of have something to work towards, and it helps kind of keep me motivated with reading, because I think sometimes it is really easy to get into a bit of a slump, or just feel kind of like dejected from reading as a result of just life and like busy schedules, etc. So I personally just, I don't know, I just enjoy having something to work towards, having a goal. Um, but that, yeah, if you don't find that helpful, then obviously don't think about it, don't worry about it. But for me personally, I like having a little reading goal, and I like being like, okay, what works for me as a reader, what doesn't, etc. So yeah, so I think that's one of the big reasons behind my kind of slowed down this, because I think potentially my like physical reading, like the physical books that I've read this year, is potentially maybe even more than what I read last year, but it's probably at least on par with what I was reading last year. I think it is just because I haven't then been reading as lots of audiobooks alongside it. I've then like dropped in like my reading rate, if that makes sense. And other also kind of really sad news for me, um, on Storygraph, you can like log how many pages you read a day. So I've been doing that every single day, that I read, and I ended up accruing a reading streak of. So I ended up accruing a reading streak of 311 days, and then last week I was visiting my friends in Brighton, and I just forgot to read one day because we were too busy having fun. And you know what? No regrets. Like, I love her. It was really great to see her. But it did then unfortunately mean that I lost my reading streak of 311 days. It does hurt. I was like, what, 45 days from reaching a year. And I didn't, so my reading streak is now currently 5 days. It really hurts. My reading streak before that was like 170 something, so I managed to like almost double it. And then I didn't. And I'm actually still mourning the loss. It's actually really sad for me. And I don't quite know how I'm still going. So that also happened. I also figured, at the start of the year, I don't remember how many books I started, like, with on my TBR at the start of the year, but I have a feeling it was like 150 something. It's currently 156. So it's probably stayed about the same, if not gone up like by a couple of books. Yeah, I've gained 35 books. So essentially, like, the number of books I've read have then also kind of been equaled by the number of books I've then gained. But I'm happy. But yeah, 70 of those books are on my physical TBR, which is pretty good. A lot of those books, which I think I said in like my first video, which was my like books I hope to read this year video, that a lot of those are plays, and I also have put all of the like I have a lot of like play collections, so it's kind of technically 5 plays in one book, but because I want to feel the achievement of having read a play, even if it is only like 60 pages long, I've tried to add all of the plays individually. So then, obviously, if I have 5 plays in a book instead of that being one book, it's. You get the idea, you get the concept. So I have a lot of books like that, a lot of books that were put on like my uni reading list that we then haven't been asked to read. So now they're just kind of sat on my TBR. And I don't know. I mean, I do kind of have intentions to read them, and I know I should read them, and they do sound interesting. But it's like, ooh, books for school, fiction. I'm always gonna choose fiction, guys. I'm sorry. I do enjoy a non-fiction book. They're not my favorite. I would just rather read something else, you know? So I mentioned the how many like, oh, not how many, but like the books that I wanted to read this year, and I figured I'd talk about how many I'd actually read. So at the start of the year, in my first ever video, I listed 37 books that I wanted to read this year. And I have currently read 5 of those books. I know, guys. It's actually really bad. I don't know how I've done that. Do you know what? Actually, let me explain myself. I didn't include any of the books that I had at uni with me in that list, which was perhaps a little bit silly of me because all I could read until a couple months ago really was those books at uni. So there's that for one. I've then come back, and my current plan of action when tackling my TBR is essentially, you know, if you saw that video that I've mentioned, the books I want to read this year, you would have noticed that a lot of them were like fantasy series because I got a lot of that for Christmas. Similarly, my birthday was then in June, and that was all I got in June. Those like 35 books that I mentioned I got this year, yeah, most of those were a book series that I got for my birthday. For example, I got The Raven Boys. That's 4 books. I got I don't know if you can see, I got the Scythe series, which also the box set also came with like one of the, you know, like intermediate books, like a novella, but the novella is like the same length as a book, so I'm assuming it's probably multiple novellas in one. So technically that's also a 4-book series that I then got. So we're already at 8, you know? And then I got like the Legendborn trilogy, and I got the Jade City trilogy. So again, that's 6 more books. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, so basically I have this game plan. I'm like, okay, when I go to uni, I don't really like taking big box sets to uni. Like, there's only so many books I can take before it just starts taking up too much space, and it just becomes a bit unreasonable because it's like, well, I'm not gonna have the time to read these anyway. So I'm trying to be good about like the amount of books I take to uni, and therefore bringing like a trilogy, even a duology. Sometimes I'm like, it seems like a bit much, but I'm more likely to bring a duology than anything more than that. So I've essentially started tackling all of my trilogies, all of my series that have 4 or more books, all of my hardbacks as well, and then also the sequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, the A Day of Fallen Night, because obviously that one's like really massive, and therefore it dissuades me from wanting to bring it to uni because it will just take up a lot of space. So I've basically been like chucking those on a like spin the wheel situation and then just seeing what it spits out at me, but I'm not too far in it. I also added in saying that, I then added a duology onto that list, but mainly because I added on the We Hunt the Flame, We Free the Stars duology because I'd had those books, like they were like some of the longest standing books on my TBR, so I felt like, okay, like if I'm putting in all of these fantasy series, I might as well put that one in there. And then of course, lo and behold, that was the first like book that my spin the wheel told me to read. So I then read a duology, and I have not really tackled any of my trilogies or any of my 4-book series. But we're getting there, guys. It's a work in progress. I finally started a trilogy. Yeah, I finally started the V. Schwab A Darker Shade of Magic series. So I've read the first one of that, and I'm about to start the second one when I go on holiday in a few days. So we're making progress. We're getting somewhere. But I like to think that then explains why I haven't read so many of the books that I initially said I was going to set out to read. A lot of those come September when I go back to uni. Those are all the books that I'm going to take. I'm going to try my very hardest to take the books that I've had like for like the longest time, and also the ones that I'd said I was going to read, you know, and then I should hopefully get through quite a lot. Will I get through all 37 that I initially said I wanted to read? No, but we always knew that was going to be the case. Let's just have some grace. Guys, I'm a poet. I'm a poet. I figured we'd finish on my biggest disappointment of the year so far, like read-wise, and then also my favorite book of the year. So I briefly mentioned this book before. Unfortunately, my biggest disappointment read of the year was We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faizal. The first one I rated 4 stars. I did enjoy it. I kind of liked the world building. I liked the vibe. I liked the kind of like romance undertones. It didn't like massively stand out to me, and I definitely liked it more in the first half than I did in the second half. I think I liked the kind of world, and I liked the main character and like the journey she set off to do. And then once she kind of started on that journey, I didn't love where the plot went. And to be honest, if I'm being really honest with you, I don't know, I don't remember why the second one didn't speak out to me, but I think from memory, it just, when you look at it, it's a little thicker than this one, and it just really didn't need to be, guys. I'm sorry. I really think it could have been so many pages shorter. There was just a lot of like back and forth between this like one issue, and I was like, you could have just not done that, you know? And I just didn't love where the plot went with it. It was one of those things, I think sometimes it's really difficult in sequels and in like fantasy series, because you get the first one and it's set in this like one part of the world, and then very often you then have to like branch out of that space because there's only so much you can do in like the one castle or with this one mission. It's like, okay, now they finish the mission and they have to move on and do other things, and then the style of the story kind of changes because you're suddenly going off and doing different things and exploring different parts of the world. And sometimes it's like, yes, this is really cool because I like the characters enough and I like the relationships enough, and you already had me sold in the first book. But in this one, it just really didn't. I just didn't enjoy it as much because of that, unfortunately. And I think it was just dragging. The weight of my TBR was kind of looming behind me, and I was like, I just feel like I'm trudging through this. The pace of it went quite slow for me, and I think the thing with this series, when I then kind of went on TikTok and obviously try to watch some edits and stuff of it later, as one does, I think one of the reasons a lot of people really like this series is because of the romance. And the romance, like, for me, it was okay, but I didn't love it. But I think that's one of the main reasons why people read it. It's a little bit of a romantasy. There is, like, enough plot where I was able to, like, still be interested. But because I then didn't care so much about the relationship, I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people are like, no, I'm gonna read this book and I love this book, is because I love these two characters together. But I wasn't, like, big on them. So I was then more just like, this plot? And that's all I have to say on that one, really. Obviously, I don't want to say too much else because it is a sequel. So I don't want to give spoilers because a lot of, like, you know, the setup for that book is based on what happens at the end of the first one. So I can't really say too much, but yeah, that was kind of my biggest disappointment. I still rated it 3 stars, which has been my lowest rating of the year so far. None of my books I've read have gone below 3 stars, which is really good. The majority of my books have been 4 stars, and I've had a lot of new 5-star reads this year. I've decided to be less picky about that. So it has been a really good year, and I do think it is a good book. And I'm not saying not to read it. I think a lot of people can and will enjoy it, especially if you do like a good like romance in your fantasy. Just unfortunately for me, I just was a little bit disappointed. I'd heard a lot of good things, and I think it's because I expected so much from it that I then was kind of like, oh, it was only 3 stars. That's quite sad. But it was still a good series. I still think it's worth the read if you know, think that it's the kind of series you'd be interested in. Definitely give it a go. It just unfortunately didn't do it for me, and that's okay. And then my favourite book of the year so far definitely has to be The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. She was also the author that wrote The Night Circus, which I also gave 5 stars when I read it in 2023, I want to say. And I think after reading this one and both of those books being 5 stars, I do have to say she has become like my favourite author, because like my favorite series of all time has to be Six of Crows and The Poppy War by Leigh Bardugo with Six of Crows and R.F. Kuang with The Poppy War. But as much as I love those series, their other work that I've then read, I haven't given like the same kind of ratings. Like I've still really enjoyed them, and I think they're really good works and books. but I haven't enjoyed them as much. Whereas Erin Morgenstern never misses. Yes, her whole book discography is 2 books, but in those 2 books, they've been like some of my favorite books ever, and I think that just speaks of like a really good writer, and therefore I'm quite confident in saying I think she is my new favorite author, and I will read everything she releases ever because she also takes her time. And I don't want to delve into this too much because I know I will just go on like a tangent, but I think unfortunately a lot of authors, there's kind of like a fast fashion quality to books and like publishing at the minute, and a lot of authors are really being pressured into like releasing books like once a year, sometimes almost like twice a year. And it's just like it then means that you don't have the time to put that quality in like writing into a book. Whereas Erin Morgenstern, like, she released The Night Circus and then she released like The Starless Sea like 10 years later, or whichever way around it was. Like, there's like a 10-year gap between those books, and there'll probably be a 10-year gap for the next one. But I'm like, you know what, I'm okay with that because I'd rather a good quality book than something that just had a good concept but wasn't executed as well as it could have been, you know? But anyway, about the book, it's just very, very whimsical. It's got so many like fairy tale fantastical elements, and it's just like every little fantasy thing you've ever heard of all in one, and it just feels so like magical. There is a plot. People often say with like The Starless Sea and The Night Circus that it's all like vibes, no plot, and the vibes do definitely heavily carry the book, and it is one of the reasons why I like it so much because it just feels like a nice book, and you just go into it thinking, oh, this just kind of feels like a nice warm big fantasy hug, you know? But I will say that there is a plot as well, and I really enjoyed the plot because it was very much like a puzzle. They gave you lots of little short stories within the book, like lots of different fairy tales within the book that initially just seem like fun little fairy tales until you realize they actually all kind of fit together to create this story. And then when you get like certain characters that at first you just thought seemed like an innocent fairy tale character right at the start of one of these short stories, actually like you meet them later on and you realize that they're real, and that like all of these events that people are explaining are kind of like real in different parts of like this timeline, and it's just insanely good. I don't want to talk about it for too long. It's very like complicated to describe, but it's just well worth the read. It's so magical, it's so whimsical. I loved every minute of it. Please read it. And I think that kind of summarizes how my year's gone so far. I don't want to yap for too much longer. I have a habit of like making my videos too long. I think I've been trying to cut down and make it no longer than half an hour. But yeah, let me know how your reading is going. Let me know, I don't know, just let me know how you're doing in general. Thank you for watching, and have a good month, I guess. I don't know when the next time you'll see me is, so